do I want to talk to you about today?
I need you on the spot.
Oh, sorry. Right there?
Yeah,
Hi,
perfect.
Walt. Okay. So here's what we're going to talk about today, what the big idea of the vCon is, so you have the context and why you might be interested in it. Then I'll talk about the actual what's inside of a vCon. What is it inside that makes it, a special thing? And then finally, who should care? I know that you care here because we deal with communications, but in general, in the marketplace, who should care about that? And so, by the way, we're going to have 25 minutes, right? And have some questions at the end.
Yep.
So
including.
Huh?
Included within the 25.
Included in the 25, all right? So I am from Boston, which means I can talk fast, but I'll try not to. My wife is a speech pathologist. Here's one quick tip for you if you speak publicly. The louder you speak, the slower you speak, which is why I got rid of the mic entirely. So the louder I scream, the slower I scream. All right. So here's the big idea about a vCon. A vCon is like a PDF, but for conversations. It describes the storage and analysis and participants of a conversation. The word vCon came out of a joke. You might know Brian Galvin. He used to be CTO of Genesis way back in the day, and he and I were working on this technology, and he said, isn't it too bad we don't have vCards for conversations? And he said, how about a vCon? And it kind of stuck, and that's where the name vCon comes from. So think of it like a PDF for conversations. It's a document format that you write that is in some way protected and authentic. So a vCon, the best, highest purpose for the vCon is to enable a system of open tools to empower customer privacy. The core idea of a vCon is, I don't know how many times you've been asked by security professionals, do you collect personal information? And my answer is, I hope not, but I'm sure I do, and I don't know where. Right? And I think that's the most honest answer I can give you, because who knows what's inside that thing, and even if I knew, I didn't know where it came from. And the vCons help to answer some of those questions so that we can take vCons and use them as a data element to store them, to interchange them, and to work through their life cycle. Customer data has a life cycle. We'll talk about that in a bit. Here's another way of looking at it. A vCon is like a CDR, but for robots. And so this might not be the room I have to explain a CDR, but it might be a room where I have to explain the robots, but maybe not. When we have a CDR, it tells you who called who, how long it took, which is as little as you could possibly imagine about a conversation to mention. Robots can use every part of the conversation. They could use the media, they can use the video, your facial recognition, your voice recognition, they can use your identification, they can use the prior analysis of your conversation. A vCon is something that we can feed into a robot. Which sort of implies that vCons, because they're holding this personal information and we're giving them to robots, seems like a good idea. They can be signed and encrypted so that you know that the vCon you got is authentic. The integrity is intact. The person who put this vCon together and sent it off to you, you can guarantee that it hasn't been changed. Even when the media that it references and it's external, we can guarantee that that hasn't changed either. And it can be encrypted, so you can save it at rest in an encrypted form, even if your database is not. A vCon is like a snowflake. I'm not sure if you have that. I don't think you have a lot of snowflakes here in Portugal. But where I live up in Boston, we have lots of snowflakes. And one of the things that the mothers say all the time is, aren't you a special little snowflake? Because every snowflake is unique. Every vCon is also unique. It's unique in what it contains, obviously, but it can also be unique in what it's trying to convey. And this is one of the reasons why we say it's like a PDF for conversations. You might think that a vCon can hold one conversation, which is absolutely true, but it can also hold all the conversations of a team for a day. It could hold all the conversations for an agent for their lifetime. Anytime you need to put together the information and represent a conversation digitally, a vCon has enough ways that you can represent it for nearly every use case of recording and communications. So it's not just one conversation, it could be many. It doesn't have to be one mode, it can be, as we go through our omni-channel experience, we started here and go over there and go over there, you can represent that in the vCon as well. So, let's talk about the 4 parts of a vCon. They are the dialogues, which is the obvious part. That's the conversation. And we'll get into those details. The identity, who was in the conversation. And we'll talk about the differences between anonymity and identity. They're both important. And the analysis, which is what the robots do to the conversation and leave their mark on it. And the attachments. And the attachments is basically the context of the conversation. Simply, if we're going to record this particular event, the context of the conversation might include this presentation. And it would make that conversation a lot more intelligible because you had the right context. So those are the 4 parts of a vCon. So let's look at them one by one. Now the first part, the obvious part, dialogues contain recordings and transcriptions. This is meant to be for any type of recorded media, either texting, messaging, video, audio, whatever Mark Zuckerberg going to sucker us with next. All of those things are meant to be inside the dialogue. Now, here's one point I want to point out. vCons can be packed or unpacked. And a packed vCon means that the media is actually inside the JSON package. By the way, it's JSON, just so you know. So it's inside a JSON package, and we 64 encoded it, stuck it in there, so it's now nice and fat. And that's really good if you don't want to have some parts of the vCon be separated from others. If you want to put them all together and put them in an email and send them, it's a great time and place for a packed vCon. However, there are other times where you don't want your business logic to have to worry about very large media files being transferred around your infrastructure. That's a great place for unpacked vCons, and both are supported. And both are tamper-proof, and both can detect changes if they are. Now, the parties contain digital identities, and we're trying to make this as big an idea as we can, because it might be important to say who is in the conversation, but it's equally important, if not more so, to say, well, who says that? Who is the person who said that person was in the conversation? So for instance, if we were on a Zoom call, our identities might be, Alan and Thomas, but the authorities that say it was Alan and Thomas would be Zoom, because Zoom authenticated us into the conversation. This has a lot of applicability to stir and shaken. Who actually, made the phone call? Now, the next part is the analysis, which is a commentary on the dialogue. Okay, now, this is really as wide as your mind wants to make it. The analysis inside of a vCon is simply an array of JSONs. So it's really easy to create them and attach them. And you can do things like, I can analyze this conversation and say that person is angry. Or here's a conversation where someone tells me it's his birthday today. Here's a conversation where I can detect that he's probably lying. This person on the call is probably lying. Any one of those analyses that would happen to the transcript, to the vCon, can be added through JSON, and there's a very good reason why you might want to do that, and we'll get to that at the end. And finally, the last part is the attachments, the context. So as I gave the example of this conversation, this presentation for this particular presentation, my day job is working for a company that sells cars. We sell about 1 million cars a year. And we sell the cars by, we get a lead in from Ford, and the person wants to buy a Ford Mustang, and we talk to the customer. That lead that we used, that we got before we called the customer, is a great piece that we can put into the attachment. I call John. Yes, I call John. Here's the lead that I got that made me call John. Why do I want to do that? Because someday a robot wants to know, what was the lead? What was John? What did John say? What did John say when you got the lead? What did John say when he picked up the phone? Robots can't know that if they don't have the data. This allows you to put the data in to make the robots have a better chance of doing their particular job. All right. So, who should care? And this is the last part here. And as I've said, we should care because this might, in our field we have done such a great job at the control plane and such a crummy job at the data plane. We do a really good job at making sure that 2 points can connect, but not a good job at taking the data that results from it and use it responsibly. So, the people who should care are companies that record agent conversations or companies that share customer data with other companies, which happens way more than I imagined it would. I'm in the auto market now for the last year, and it's mind-blowing actually. Companies subject to customer data regulations, which is the entirety of the EU, California, Virginia, Maryland, soon to be the rest of the United States, I'm sure, and companies that use customer conversations for machine learning. I can boil it all down. Who should care? Companies. That's the people who should care about this. And I'll tell you what. So the first thing is, and this might apply to you. We all know companies that do this. My company does this. For companies that record customer conversations, they are inherently capturing personal information, and not to the level that we had understood before of, oh my goodness, I gave you my mother's maiden name. It's to the level of, I know what your voice sounds like, and I know what your face looks like. And unlike my name, which I changed when I got married, I can't change my face, and I can't change my voice. The leak of personal information that you can't change is undoubtedly at a level more dangerous than information which you can change. And every time we record somebody, that personal information is recorded. And the amount of data in that conversation is incredible. Thanks to Mitch, if he's online, for pointing this one out to me. When you even record a customer conversation on Zoom, are you recording what's happening behind them? What's on their wall? Did their wife walk behind you? There is so much more that can get leaked in that we ever could imagine that we're going to have to deal with. What a vCon allows you to do is know what was captured authoritatively. If you have a fact, you can deal with a fact. A vCon captures a fact. Now, given that, companies that are subject to customer data privacy laws, like GDPR, we've got a big problem coming, and vCons are designed to help us with that problem. And that is, in the EU, you have the right to be forgotten. You can call a company and say, hey, will you please delete my data, or what data do you know about me? So my company is 8 years old, and we've been talking to 1 million people for 8 years. It's 8 million people. Do I know what information I have about people? No, I don't, but I got a lot of it. And can I figure it out one day? Absolutely, because I've got it. When a government organization today says, tell me what information you have about a customer, none of us can answer it if we've recorded their conversations. We simply can't. So neither can we guarantee that we've deleted it. we have to start taking very seriously this idea of customer data. We are holders of their most important things. If we are not responsible, we should expect to be held responsible. And that responsibility is what we're coming into in our field. Now, and here's the real here's the thing that actually kind of kicked a lot of this off. So companies that share customer information should also care about this. And I'll tell you one thing my company does not do, and we do not sell our data. We're not data salesmen in any way, shape, or form, and never will be. But I'll tell you what we are. We're the guys who stand between 18 manufacturers, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, and about 150 car stores in America. And almost without exception, we get a lead from Ford. We talk to the guy, do you know where the showroom is? How about Thursday? I'm learning how to sell cars. And then I give it to the showroom and he goes, yes, I'll be there at 4 o'clock. I shared the information. Ford shared the information with me. I shared it with Jack Madden, Ford of Tewksbury. That information was shared right down the line. If a customer goes to Ford and says, please delete my data, Ford has no opportunity to say, sure, I can guarantee I've deleted your data. They can't, because they don't know where it went. We don't track our data. We don't know where it went. We don't know what happened to it. And I understand you can't ultimately track data, but there isn't even a way for the good guys to track the data. You can't be a good guy and do it. And this ends up being the real, finally, one of the largest financial things I've found about vCons. And I think by now you can imagine, okay, there's fines involved, GDPR fines. We know that Amazon paid $800 million in GDPR fines last year alone. The FTC just made every car dealer in the country a financial institution. Here's the real one. Here's the one I think is just going to be really hard to ignore. So, companies today, we all know this, use our data to feed the robots. They're already feeding robots with our stuff. Well, here's the catch. When a customer says to you, will you please delete my data, the company has to delete the data. If the company used your data in a model, they have to rerun the model without your data. First of all, do they know what models they used in the data? Do they actually keep track of what customers they use to make that model? No, they didn't. And secondly, and this is my favorite stat of the week. This is fantastic. So a large model, a large text model for text to speech or something like that, currently costs somewhere around $50,000 to retrain. And electricity costs. That's electricity. It's not like I'm going to pay you 50 grand to do it. I'm going to plug into the wall and $50,000 of electricity later, I've retrained my model. Which also happens to be the exact same amount of energy that is contained in a railroad boxcar of coal. That is the environmental impact of retraining a model. The final point to this is that a recent meta-study of AI has shown that the only differentiator in the long run between artificial intelligence models isn't the algorithm, isn't the model, it's the amount of energy you put into it. That if you put more training into a model, it gets better over a wide range of times and situations. And that means there's never going to be enough power, because more power will always be advantageous. And if you're going in a race, it's who has the most power. vCons allow you to be very efficient and very smart about the customer data that we use to train the models, so that we don't overtrain them or undertrain them. We can track which models used which customers. And that simple economic fact will be a very big driver in our market someday soon. And so vCons are designed to allow us to have a tool to actually manage that upcoming problem. So, where can you learn more? Well, you can learn more here at TADSummit. And by the way, I'm going to give a plug for TADSummit. These are the kinds of things that come out of organizations like this. The reason why I'm involved with this, and I hope that you're involved with this as well, is because we can move the needle. We can think new thoughts. The bigger a company is, the more constrained it is, the more constrained it is. That isn't our problem here. So where can you learn more? There's a white paper that we all did, 25 pages of it, so if you're tired, or can't go to sleep, you know, it's great. Wonderful for that. There's now a draft in the IETF that I wrote with Dan Petrie, one of the guys I worked with in the original SIP fund. It is also matched with a working implementation of vCons in Python. That's in GitHub. We've had two hackathons around it now. One here, one at IETF. You can ask me. My name is Thomas. I'm at STROLID. And I want to thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Any questions for Thomas?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go for it.
It seems like a great idea to put together all the data and sources and all of that, but shouldn't this actually be run on top of a blockchain so we can keep track of who accesses?
That's a great. So the question is, if you didn't hear it, shouldn't this be running on top of a blockchain?
Yeah.
And my answer is, I'm sure it's gonna. Right. This is the vCons themselves are a data standard meant for interchange, and having the IDs of a vCon on a blockchain makes entire sense. 100%. There's going to be a lot of really great applications, I think, that involve vCons, and the alternative to tracking analyses is to actually put that analysis inside the vCon. So if you thought of it, it's the opposite way. So a blockchain would have all of the vCons that these automation use, versus if you put it in the vCon, you would have all the automations the vCon used. So it's a foreign key issue either way. So however yours is going to be optimized for it, you'll do that. And that's one of the reasons why it's not part of the standard. So you can put it either way. One other thing, we're working on a really kind of a fun application we're gonna put out in a couple of weeks on vCons to look out for. It's open source too. By the way, this is all open source. This is all open standards. This is not any sort of proprietary play here. This really is, I think, going to be an important tool in our tool set, and it really needs all the eyeballs we can get, all the analysis, all to make sure we really are doing a good job with it. Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you for your work.
Yeah.
So how do you imagine this playing forward? Let's say 10 years from now, how do the big companies that are running telecom going to adopt? Where is the pressure coming from?
Yeah, it's great question. So the question was, where do we think the pressure is going to come from for the big mass market? And I have an opinion, but like noses, we all have one. Here's mine. If you just step out of telecom for a second and go into the data world for a moment, you'll see that there's actually two basic layers that you can think about. And when we think about AI, we think about robots and artificial intelligence and all that junk on top, which is the sexy stuff. But below it is the data engineering. It's the guys who are running data pipelines, making sure the data is accurate, it's timely, it's protected, it's guarded, so that the AI can use it appropriately. I believe that vCons will be part of a standard enterprise data engineering scheme, where the data engineers of a company will be managing that, because customers will say, I want to be forgotten, and they have to be forgotten. This is a classic data engineering problem. There's going to be Salesforce implementations that say, please give me a list of all my disgruntled customers that I talked to today. Well, where are they getting that information from? The data engineering department.
Yeah, do you feel like, I don't know, a PCI DSS or a ISO or a SOC 2 will eventually recommend a vCon as a way to be compliant with their standards?
Yes, I do, and let me just be really frank about that. If you read the GDPR, which again is kind of boring, but if you do read the GDPR, it says that you can't release any information that would reveal the sex, the age, or the race. And what more could let me know what your age, sex, or race was, but your visual or your audio? So, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The only reason they're not doing it now is because there's no state of the art to do it.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for
being
your attention. Appreciate that.